Hi there, this is Eleanor Clapham, and I am here to retell the story of my birth of little Lucas. I made a commitment a long time ago now, to 6 weeks prior to the birth, to record what my experiences, my intentions, my beliefs in what birth was going to be like, and then the whole idea was that I was going to film the birth itself, and then basically prove once and for all that it is possible, prove to myself and to prove to others that if you want to have an easy, calm and pain-free birth, then it's possible. So I was doing really well, and there's a couple of videos that got completely lost, which I'm really bummed about, because they were just before the birth, and they had some good information on there that I really believed in, and I don't know what happened. I think he may be teething, so he might be a little bit temperamental. He's 6 months old now, and the idea was to film the birth. But then we got the camera ready, we got the tripod ready, we went to the hospital, and we've completely forgot to turn the camera on, which is a real pity, because I would have loved to have watched it myself, and I would have loved to have shared my experience. I would have liked to see what it was like, as opposed to just what it was like in my mind. I had to speak a lot to my doula and to my husband about what their sort of experience was, because my experience and everyone else's experience were two different things. So anyway, sorry about that. I don't have a video of the birth. Maybe for my next birth I'll have that. So I'll tell the story, and hopefully that will give a clearer idea anyway, to anyone who was been waiting around, wondering what happened to this lady who said she was going to have a pain-free birth, and then she didn't tell us about it. So here I am. So this is Lucas. Lucas is 6 months old. And he's a very, very happy and easy little guy. He's very calm. He's playful, except for today it's raining and I think he's teething, so he's not quite as happy as he usually is. But this is the little distraction tool that I use. So the story of the birth. 2 minutes into the video, here I go. We lived about half an hour. We've just moved, but before we lived about half an hour drive from the hospital that I really wanted to be at. And I wanted to be at that hospital because they had a birth center there, and they saw birth as a non-medical event, but it was still right next to the hospital. So if anything should happen, then you're right next to the hospital, so you can be transferred straight away. So I was really, really keen for that, so I really stuck to my guns to be in that hospital rather than the hospital right around the road from my house, for that reason. So it was a really good thing that I really was as prepared as I had been. At around, I think it was about 10 o'clock at night, I thought that I had waters broken, but I wasn't sure about it. And so I called the hospital, and they said that just do a couple of squats and see if anything happens, and if it doesn't, then just relax. And the hospital, they tell you that you basically have to stay home until your contractions are 5 minutes apart and 1 minute long. Well, let me just tell you a thing about contractions. I didn't experience any of those contractions that people are talking about. I didn't feel like a tightening and then a loosening and then a tightening and a loosening. All I knew was something's happening, and I know it's going to happen tonight. And so I told my husband, let's go to the hospital. We went to the hospital, and they checked me, and they said, no, your waters haven't broken. Go home. And I was starting to feel like tightening around, my abdomen. I knew. No, I think that my waters have broken, and I do think that I'm going to have a baby tonight. But the nurse was like, no, you're not in labor, you're not in labor. She told me about 100 times, you're not in labor, go home. So I said to my husband, okay, let's go to the hotel right next door. And let's just, let's see what happens, because I don't want to drive a whole half an hour home and then to find out that I am in labor and then to come back. So we went to the hotel right next door, and there I sat for about 1 hour. about 1 hour, feeling, I didn't know what was going on. I thought that maybe Lucas was turning around because I really felt this tightening. Now, I wasn't in pain. I would liken it to a workout at the gym. So I'm not saying that I was feeling nothing. I was feeling lots of feelings going on. I could feel that something was going on and that everything was getting really tight, but it didn't feel like it didn't feel like this excruciating thing that people were talking about. I was sort of doubting in my mind at myself that maybe he was just turning around and that's why it felt tight or something like that. But anyway, I kept up with my hypnobirthing. I kept up with my breathing was really good. So it was 20 seconds in, 20 seconds out. I was basically like, all of the images and things that I'd practiced kind of just went out the window at the time. And I was more just sort of breathing and present in the moment. And really, I kept on saying to myself, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. And that was basically it. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to tell people that you won't feel anything. I'm just saying that it wasn't, for me, like this horrible pain. I have had hangovers worse than that. It was just like a tightening. But there was no sense of, like, you know, this contraction that goes for a minute and then something that releases for 5 minutes and then contracts. It was just ongoing. It never stopped. It was like just getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And that's why the nurse kept on telling me that I'm not in labor. Until eventually it got so powerful that I said to my husband, we're going back to I've called the nurse a couple of times. She kept insisting that just stay home, you're not in labor. Until finally I said to my husband, we're going back over to the birth center because I think that something's happening. I know that something's happening. Like I hadn't experienced any of that during the whole pregnancy. I knew that something was going on. And so I was getting extremely like tired. Like I couldn't stand up properly. I couldn't walk properly. But I wasn't, you know, screaming or crying or anything like that. So I hope that this makes it's hard for me to explain what I experienced. But the thing to take away is that I wasn't in pain. I felt sensations that at times were uncomfortable, but I wouldn't be any worse than a really hard workout at the gym where your muscles are basically being worked. That's what was happening. My muscles, my uterus were being worked, and that's what it felt like. So then when we got to the hospital, which was, thank goodness, only like around the corner from the hotel, what happened? The nurse checked me and she said, "You're 8 centimeters dilated, the baby's coming," which I knew was happening anyway, but she wasn't listening to me. Because I was so calm. I wasn't, you know, I wasn't losing it and I wasn't panicking, that she just I didn't seem like somebody who was in labor, so she was just, and I remember that she checked me the first time. I asked her, "Did you check the dilation?" She's like, "No, I checked to see if your waters are broken." I was like, "Why didn't you check to see if I was dilated?" Anyway, doesn't matter, because 1 hour later, this little guy was born. And it was fantastic. Like it was a real kind of spiritual experience. I was in the bath for some time, and then I had to get out because his heart rate dropped. And the reason why his heart rate dropped is he had the umbilical cord around his neck, but it wasn't a big problem with me because it came out so quickly. And my doula was fantastic. She was really, really supportive. I was really I was really focused. There were things that I didn't expect that occurred. For example, that when sort of like I wasn't planning on pushing per se. I was planning on, you know, breathing baby down. So when this urge to push came along, I kind of resisted it because I was like, no, I don't want to push. I want to breathe the baby down. But then, like, I sort of got over that, and I sort of went with the whole pushing thing. And for me, the best way to explain what it felt like was almost as if, you know, when you vomit this way, it felt like it was like vomiting the other way, in the sense of like a huge convulsion. I don't know if he's getting freaked out by the story or he's just bored. So yeah, there was the nurse she cut me a couple of times, which annoyed me because I'd already instructed that her not to, but she insisted that it wasn't necessary, and whether or not it was necessary or not, it doesn't really matter because it wasn't, the end of the world. But I went to so much trouble preparing not to have like a tear, and then for her to go ahead and cut me anyway. But that sort of thing doesn't matter because when he was born, he was 100% healthy. He was alert, and he was just happy. He didn't cry at all. He made a couple of like kind of noises, but he didn't lose it. He didn't like cry at any point. Like, it wasn't until a couple of days later that I heard his first real kind of cry of distress, and yeah. It was easy. Like I said, I've had hangovers worse than that, and I could do that 100 times without any fear. And I know that the next time, they say, so what was it? The labor itself went for about 3.5 hours. Ooh. And they say that your second labor is shorter than your first, so I've got to be living really close to the hospital next time. So I really hope that I was really happy with it. I was unbelievably happy with the whole experience. It was not painful. I didn't use any drugs. Actually, when I went to the hospital, the nurse said, "Oh, you've got period pain," which is the most ridiculous thing now thinking back for her to say, because what pregnant woman has period pain? And she gave me Panadine Forte. So I suppose I did have some drug, but I wasn't I don't think really Panadine Forte really goes under the same sort of umbrella as an epidural. So I never felt any need for any kind of painkillers, and I really, 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 really put it down to my preparation. I had a couple of friends who have recently had babies, and actually both of them had really bad experiences. And I remember talking to them beforehand that they said, my plan is, they both said this, my plan is something along the lines of not to have a plan, to go with the flow. And if I need an epidural, I'll have an epidural. If I need a cesarean, I'll have a cesarean. And I was at the time thinking, oh my God, if you plan to fail to plan, you plan to fail, basically, in that you can't just, for me, I'm an advocate of planning and preparing mentally and physically for an event. If you go into an event like birth unprepared, that is the reason why so many people have such horrible experiences. And maybe there's people out there that did lots of preparation and they still had bad experiences. I've never met any. So if you're out there, then leave a comment and we'll have a discussion about it. But that is my belief, in that I prepared for it. I had a wonderful experience. I know people who did not prepare for it and had terrible experience. So what's the major thing is preparation, practice, commitment, and really just believing. I really believed that it wasn't going to be horrible, and it wasn't. It was wonderful. And at the end of the day, like, I've got this wonderful little guy, this beautiful little guy who's really not showing his best side at the moment. Look at you. Yeah, so that's it. I'm glad I finally got around to doing this video, and that somebody out there who is about to have a baby is convinced that it won't be horrible. They do the preparation, they commit to it, and they have a wonderful experience. That's all I really made these videos for. So have a good day, and good luck to anyone out there who is about to commit to one of these sort of things.